Thanks for staying with us here on TVC Breakfast. It's not time for us to look at what the papers are reporting. First, let's have a peek through the Nation newspaper with a banner headline: Tax Laws, House of Reps reject Minority Caucus report, fireworks likely as lawmakers return from recess. Daily Independent: 4 banks risk forced merger, downgrade as deadline nears. That's talking about the recapitalization. Nigerian Tribune: why we will invest $20 billion in Nigeria, Shell CEO commends Tinubu's leadership. Next is the Abuja Inquirer: FCDA workers strike, chaos looms in Abuja, NLC TVC back striking workers, vow to invade court premises Monday, secondary primary schools join strike. The Leadership newspaper is next. Kurmi Wali abduction: I lost 2-week-old baby. My husband, 5 children still in captivity. Escaped mother. Platform Times: coup plot. Military nails 16 officers. Submits report to Tinubu. Brigadier General: others face possible dismissal. Defense intelligence confirms threat to democracy. Daily Trust: alleged coup. Military hands over report to Tinubu. And next is this Nigeria talking about politics. Yusuf versus Kwakwanso battle for Kano's 6 million votes rages. Governor, National Assembly members, others join APC today. NNPP, Kwakwanso: this is biggest betrayal ever. The same thing with the Punch newspaper. 2027 battle. Kano earthquake as Yusuf dumps opposition for APC. NNPP senator attacks federal government over Kano's government's defection. And PDP, Kano governor's defection actually. PDP, ADC, other slap move as moral collapse, not political gain. The Daily Times: NFFL seeks constitutional backing for rotational presidency. The Nature News newspaper says Nigeria to launch maiden cloves farming initiatives with 74,000 farmers. And last but not least is Sport and Live. Brentford nil, Nottingham Forest 2. Awoni scores first goal of the season. And also former Turkey referee declares Osimhen a player with very high professional ethics. Right then, let's get down to brass tack by doing this with my colleagues Olamide, Ria, and indeed our in-house analyst Biodo Shomi. Let's start off with the Nation newspaper talking about the tax laws. The conversation is still on. We'll never stop having this conversation until we say we're there yet, already rather. So tax laws, House of Reps rejects Minority Caucus report, fireworks likely as lawmakers return from recess. Any action taken by a caucus in this regard is therefore non-binding, informal, and without legal or institutional consequences. That's the legislator, the authorities in the legislature, talking about this, saying that it is for the Speaker to assign whoever is going to oversee any ad hoc committee, whatever it is, not for the Minority Caucus, as that is not recognized by the House. Exactly.
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in this headline. It's not about the fine print of the tax reform laws. It's about the majority saying, minority, you don't get to decide for us. You don't get to shape the narrative around that, right? And that's what policy essentially is. But the side effect of this is that reforms of this tax law are going to slow down in the process. Implementation will be slow and low. If they're fighting internally, what does that mean for the wider implementation that the federal government is trying to push for these tax laws? There's been so much brouhaha and shenanigans around this tax reform law. The last thing we need is minority and majority in the House fighting internally about this. It's the last thing that the populace needs. Right now, they should be in the field pushing implementation, making sure that policy backs implementation.
Absolutely.
This is very unnecessary.
Well, if you look at the House, they said that time has actually overtaken, the issue of what was written in the tax law is different from what was gazetted. But the House said that they already had a committee looking into it, not for the Minority Caucus. And the fact that the copies that we have, the 4 tax laws that we have, they're already gazetted and nothing is different in it. So in all of these, do you feel that some people are still worried as to the shape these tax laws are going to take?
For me, Ibrahim, I'll just say that I worry about how we take things in Nigeria. I worry about how we handle very important things. It's very worrisome to see that we're having conversations about tax where some people say, oh, this is not what you wrote, this is what you wrote. At the end of the day, what is the most important thing for this tax to go out, for Nigerians to pay tax? Right. I was speaking to somebody yesterday, and honestly, the person said to me that Nigerians are still finding it very difficult with this new tax law. So some people are against
to understand it.
Yeah,
but the documents are out there.
How many people are going out to read? That's
so they have to read.
How many people want to read? Do you understand? They just take from what they listen to on social media.
That's
not
right.
even very important,
which is very dangerous.
Stations. You don't come to TVC to hear what we're saying. You're just checking on social media where people are saying different things about it. I know that the House also made a statement that you cannot do this on your own. A committee has to agree before you do this. Right. But for me, it's just hurtful that we're having this kind of conversations about tax. The most important thing we should do is to make sure it's implemented, to make sure that people get to pay their tax. At the end of the day, we get to see the dividends of tax. But the back and forth, this is not what was wrote. It doesn't also speak well of us. It doesn't speak well of credibility, because now people are wondering if they are having this fight internally, then could there be something like we always say, there's no smoke without fire.
Absolutely.
So I think that they need to fix their house in order and come out with one word, one unified word that Nigerians will believe. Absolutely.
As she said, there is no smoke without fire, because if those one are raising the alarm, it means that there is something. Because they talked about a mandatory 20% tax deposit before appealing to the High Court, and the fact that oversight function or provisions in the National Revenue Service Act was removed for the National Assembly. Those are some of the alarm raised, but the House authorities are saying that that's not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at what is really going on around the tax, it's just about playing politics, and that's what it is. It's the business of the minority caucus within the National Assembly to do what they are doing, and it's also the business of the majority to say, no, you cannot do that. Do not forget that these allegations were raised by a minority member, I think PDP Abdul Samad, Dasuki was the one that raised this issue. And then when he raised it, he did not specify which areas were actually altered, throwing the whole country into frenzy. Oh, which area has been altered, not altered. The whole thing was put out in the public domain, just like you commented, that look, but the whole thing is out. Go and compare it yourself and see whether there has been any alteration that will fundamentally alter the tax laws, which has been approved. But the bottom line is nobody could find anything. So the House of Reps actually did set up an ad hoc committee to probe into the whole affair and then report back to the House of Reps. The minority caucus, again, in another attempt, to stampede the ad hoc committee of the House to accept their own version, which they have not even found to be credible, came up with this report. So that's why the House of Reps is saying, no, hang on a minute. This House has set up a committee, ad hoc committee, let them report on it. It is not for you to stampede us and lead us to accept your own version.
Absolutely. All right, then let's move on to the Daily Independent, talking about the recapitalization. 4 banks risk post-merger downgrade as deadline nears. I know we talked about these often and often. So they didn't mention the 4 banks, but one thing is that we know that 500 billion naira for those banks that have international, standing. Yeah, the second tier, which is 200 billion naira for the national banks and 50 billion naira for the regional banks. So, but in all of this, we'll see what happens. It's just a matter of time. For it. But because of time, let's move on to the Nigerian Tribune. Shell is saying that this is the reason we will invest $20 billion in Nigeria, and they are also commending President Tinubu's initiative. And the fact that Shell has been here for a long time, there was a time that they divested, there was a time they also had issues in the Niger Delta, the issue of oil theft, CSOs, human rights, activists saying that they degraded, the lands and all of that. But now they're saying that they love what is going on in Nigeria. They want to invest $20 billion. This is coming after they also invested $5 billion.
Yes, I want to make it clear that a big oil company like Shell is not investing the sum of $20 billion, I believe, is in Naira.
$20 billion.
$20 billion because of goodwill to Nigeria. Their big oil is committing because they now believe in the financial policy of Nigeria. They believe in our financial future, and that is why they are committing. When you see big oil committing this amount of large money, it's because the financial forecast for Nigeria seems good, and they're right to commend the president. Although I will say this, they're not just investing in oil; they're investing in gas, in infrastructure, in Nigeria's clean energy and renewable energy sector. I think the future looks bright,
absolutely.
considering our troubled relationship with Shell in the past.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, that this time around we need to tell them this is how we want things to be done.
Yes.
Otherwise, if we are not on the table with them, we'll be in the menu. And
Of course, in every discussion, you have to be on the table. If not, you'll be sidelined. But when I hear things like this, I'm very excited because I'm coming from a youth perspective. Everybody knows I'm all about the youth, and I feel like this will bring more job opportunities. So that's where I'm even hammering on. But it's beautiful to see that, people are now having the courage and the, I don't want to say love, let me just say courage to invest in Nigeria because they feel like Nigeria is stable. And when we hear stories like this, it's beautiful. We're looking at $20 billion. But of course, we need to make sure that we're part of the conversation. We need to make sure that this is not something that they will invest and later on we are now lacking behind. We need to make sure that we are having this conversation whereby Nigeria and Shell, they are both standing on mutual grounds. And another thing I want to mention about this as well, anytime we speak about things like this, I speak about insecurity. I tell you, there's a lot of people that want to invest in Nigeria, but oftentimes they're worried about, the insecurity here and there. So our economy is growing. Kudos to the president. Of course, we cannot deny the fact that there are some reforms that he has done that, others could not do. But what we need to do now is just make sure that we have quality security and, Nigerians can sleep and wake up peacefully.
It is, I would still love to ask you, to stay with you on this as I come to Mr. Shomi, on what story we have on the Platform Times talking about the coup plots, but I'll come to you in a minute. Maria, quickly, looking at the leadership newspaper, the Kurumi Wali abduction, a woman said that she lost 2-week-old baby, a husband, 5 children who were still in captivity. That was a mother who escaped, out of the 177 who were supposedly, kidnapped in Kurumi in the north, which the police denied earlier. And then now they say they are investigating, and now they're also saying they're running after them. And the US is saying you need to take care of the Nigerian Christians. Indeed, every Nigerian every Nigerian citizens have to be taken care of.
My heart is very heavy, and I'm speaking to people there. That is one story that I'm deeply following close by. I told you, some of the people that spoke to me, they told me they cannot cry anymore. When grief hits you, that the tears don't even drop out of your eyes. Now we're seeing a mother that lost her 2-month-old baby, a child. And when we speak about this, oftentimes, for the leadership, oftentimes we say that, we just break the news. But these people have been affected. A mother has lost her child. A father has lost his son. It's quite worrisome. And I understand where the US is coming from. And that's why we need to work together with the US in terms of intelligence. Because, Ibrahim, it's one too many times. This is not the first time this has happened. In that same Kaduna, I can list places for you that we've seen mass, and I call it senseless kidnapping, that it doesn't even make sense. What are we doing? Are we waiting for something to happen before we say something? Or are we putting measures in place that these don't happen again? People should be able to go to churches. People in that community right now are telling me that they don't even want to go to church because they are afraid. Now you are in a country that you are scared to worship your God. It's quite worrisome.
It's so
and
sad.
I feel like now we need to work with the US, be it intelligence, whatever it is. We need to crop out this insecurity. People cannot keep losing their loved ones.
And I think that is actually yielding results because the fact that we've been able to buy some ammunition, they're only saying that we need to focus on them. So I understand that we need to have an expansion of our elaborative conversation, on these newspapers. But if you look at the Platform Times, vis-a-vis what we also said, October the 1st, the National Parade was actually cancelled as a result, even though they said it was administrative, for administrative reasons. But later on, we got to hear that there was a coup plot, and the military nailed 16 officers submit reports to Tinubu. The same thing for the Daily Trust. They said alleged coup, military hands over report to Tinubu. They made different traces, and they were able to ascertain that this also involved Brigadier General, others also to face possible dismissal, and Defense Intelligence confirms threat to democracy. How come we're talking about coup in 2025, albeit this is 2026?
Well, when the news came out, I think October 1st.
Yeah.
I think so, when the National Parade or Independence Parade was actually cancelled. Many people were taken aback, wondering, what has coup got to do with disgruntled officers? Yes, absolutely. Some people will tap into the feelings of disgruntled officers over one thing or the other to try and foment trouble within the country. Then we learned that a former governor was linked to it, who I still believe is out of the country.
That's right. He's at large.
He's at large. So it speaks a lot about what has happened, because eventually, if you have nothing to hide, why don't you come back and say, look, hang on a minute, I'm here, probe me, I have nothing to do with it. But
he's been saying that he had no connection.
Yeah, but he refused to return.
But they also fingered NDDC You know,
Absolutely.
That's also with 45 billion.
Yes, because of the source of funding and all that.
Yeah.
So he has refused to come
be
back.
for our national, cake. Others are using it to prosecute,
Absolutely.
destabilization of government.
So many people were taken aback and said, hang on a minute, what is going on? The best, the worst democracy, civil rule, is better than the best military. You need to live under the military rule and then understand what goes on. This kind of conversation cannot happen under the military rule.
Street went jubilant when they heard of the death of Abacha. I can remember then, I was still very young. We were just running up and down on the streets, like everyone was jubilating because of the decree, the iron fist, which Nigeria was ruled with.
At a point, 250 people were slaughtered on the streets of Lagos over June 12th. 250 in one day. The military doesn't care. You remember what happened with the Shiites in Zaria?
That's right.
When Buratai was chief of army staff. Yes, we might not even accept.
But then it was under democracy. It wasn't.
Well, absolutely. But the way the military reacts to issues, we might say that, look, we are not accepting amnesty figure of 800 people killed, but the official figure was pointing at 250, 300 also. So for me, that tells you what to expect when you're under the military. So for some people to even dream of bringing back the military to this country, for me, is totally unacceptable. Then one thing you need to understand is the military rule and their laws are totally different from ours. So they have the right to keep them, probe into the issues, court-martial them if necessary, and then give their own verdict. But at the end of the day, I don't think Nigerians want to truncate democracy. No matter. Yeah, there will always be one or few people who are disgruntled, but
because
I don't think
I
feel
we know the importance of democracy. Now, I just want to talk about democracy, but Mr. Biodo, I'll say with you, some people actually do not want it. It's sad. Not everybody wants the progress of Nigeria, because we know that democracy is for the people, and at the end of the day, the government is for the people. But
you're right. That's according to Abraham Lincoln, saying that the democracy government of the people, by the people, and for the people. On that note, it's still on the same matter. If you look at it, also extended to political implications. So they talked about high-profile politicians, including former governor, which he mentioned from the south, though official charges have not been publicized. The same thing, military shake-up. And President Tinubu, remember that time when the president had to, rejig the military, the service chiefs, the military apparatus. In all of this, talking about coup in this present day and time, what if that had happened? Where would we be at this time?
Absolutely. The strength of a democracy is not dependent on the absence of threats. It's dependent on how institutions respond to these threats.
That's right.
And what this tells me, the fact that the military submitted a detailed report to the president on the details of this coup, the fact that they named officers involved, shows me that our institutional guardrails are still very much strong and holding. The president has responded the best way he possibly can. And for the military to be in collaboration and cooperating with the presidency so well concerning the details of this coup tells me that it's a few bad officers. What I find very interesting about the concept of coups in Nigeria is that Nigerians seem to have forgotten our history and how much bloodshed there were in coups past. You might not be happy with this current government or even the presidency, but trust me, military rule is something that Nigeria holds a lot of scars from. I remember when my father, Professor Femi Odekunle, was arrested, he was accused of plotting a coup along with Dia, and he was arrested. And I'll tell you what, President Bola Tinubu is a very, very merciful man, because the way that Abacha treated my father, till today, my family still holds that scar. So if you guys are thinking that a coup plotting is light work, it is not. There are very serious consequences. But what data can the presidency take from this coup threat? It can tell us that there's many internal grievances, and we need to stop them in their tracks and address them before they become consequential ideological threats.
For me, I'll even say, what sensible person would just want a coup to happen in Nigeria? Like, from what are you thinking? Like, during a coup, people will die, there'll be bloodshed. Sometimes I wonder, Nigerians, are we really patriotic, as we say? Oftentimes you see, and I say this all the time, you're not okay with a particular government. But that doesn't mean you want, for chaos to happen in your country. Yes, you don't agree with the president, but you don't want harm to happen in Nigeria, because even when the president is not there again, Nigeria is Nigeria. Nigeria is a country. Nobody owns Nigeria. Nigeria is for the people. Nigeria is for all of us.
And then if you hate the government will definitely go, and Nigeria will remain.
Absolutely.
But during what Olamide said actually, reminded me of what happened recently. You remember the Al Mustafa case, who was alleged to have killed or murdered the wife of late
Kudirat Abiola.
Kudirat Abiola, and then they said. The Supreme Court, the court actually threw out the case because Lagos State failed to file charges or present its own side of the story. But when we say that something happened, why is it that a state where the murder actually took place, close to our old office, there at 7-Up, why is it that Lagos State will just not, will be, I don't want to use the word lackadaisical, but I just mentioned it. Exactly. On this matter, we need to find closure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't forget, this Supreme Court gave Lagos State the green light 13 years ago to say, look, even though you apply to file out of time, they still agreed that, look, this is a very serious matter. Please file your case. And that didn't happen over 13 years. So, I mean, I'm sure this is not under this current Lagos State government. But eventually, unfortunately, they can't appeal that case anymore because there's a closure now by the Supreme Court. But what we need to understand about the implications of coup and all these issues is, one, for instance, look at what would have happened to our country.
That's right.
Assuming there had been a coup. One, we will have lost about $37 billion in foreign investment in our country because the foreign investors now have confidence in our country. And I will tell you how. The $5 billion Saudi Arabia investment in Nigeria, which we have signed. There's a $1.5 billion, the Brazil's investment in the agricultural sector. There's Bonga Southwest, 20 billion.
Okay, so we just need to raise it because
full of knowledge.
I understand that we need to raise it because of our next segment. Let's talk politics very quickly. This Nigeria say, okay, I understand that there's actually no time. We'll definitely discuss this, in the course of our programming.
Yes,
absolutely.
I'm bringing back
that's about it for the newspapers up for review. Still to come, the US has urged Nigeria to strengthen protection for Christian communities following the abduction of 177 worshippers in Kaduna. Join us after the break for more. Just stay with us. We'll be right back.